Hi, thanks for joining us for the Family Plot, Gardening in the Mid-South. I'm Chris Cooper. Trees are beautiful, but they look awful when they're sick. Today we're talking about tree diseases. Also, we'll show how to preserve the great taste of herbs all year long. That's just ahead on the Family Plot, Gardening in the Mid-South.
Production funding for the Family Plot, Gardening in the Mid-South is provided by the WKNO Production Fund, the WKNO Endowment Fund, and by viewers like you. Thank you.
Welcome to the Family Plot. I'm Chris Cooper. Joining me today is Joellen Diamond. Joellen is the Director of Landscape at the University of Memphis, and Sherry McCullough will be joining me later. All right, Joellen, let's talk a little bit about tree diseases. And there have been a lot of diseases this year because of the
cool, wet spring. Cool, wet weather in the spring is one of the #1 causes of the increase in tree diseases.
I can definitely believe that. In this area, we've had cool, wet weather in the spring.
And it has been, for us personally, it's been pleasant for people,
nice.
but the trees are suffering a little bit because of it.
That's right. So let's start with the first common tree disease, which is anthracnose.
Anthracnose.
Okay.
This is a fungus that affects a lot of deciduous and evergreen trees. There are different types of fungi that actually attack and cause anthracnose. And it's different for, certain trees will get certain types of the fungus that causes the anthracnose. You want to see what it looks like? Well, it starts with black spots and areas on the leaves, and sometimes it'll carry itself through to the stems and down the branches to, the main trunk. Or another main branch. And the best thing to do is when you start seeing that, to cut it out as soon as possible, because then don't put that in the compost pile. Put that in a garbage and throw it away, because you don't want those spores to stay around to infect the tree again.
Right, because those spores are still there.
They're still there, yes. Yeah. High humidity also can cause anthracnose. So that's why in the fall, sometimes when we start getting cool weather, you'll start seeing anthracnose also on your trees.
Yeah.
Fungicides can work, but remember, you're talking about a tree. And it's kind of hard to spray a large tree. And I would get a professional to do that if you just really want to. But anthracnose usually doesn't affect the whole tree unless you just don't do anything about taking out the dead parts. And like I said, cut out the dead parts as soon as you see them, and that will throw away those spores so they don't keep infecting the tree or other trees around it.
Right. So practice good sanitation, right?
Very good sanitation. And when the leaves fall in the fall season, collect them, but don't put them in the compost pile because they may be infected with that.
Okay. All right. So that's anthracnose.
Anthracnose.
All right.
Then we've got bacterial leaf scorch. Now that's mostly of oak trees. The pin oak being the worst. In fact, pin oaks are so bad with leaf scorch disease that we don't even recommend pin oaks anymore because they're just so affected by this disease. Again, it's a bacteria this time that affects the xylem of the system of the tree, which is where the nutrients all flow up and down the tree.
Right.
Once the tree gets this, it's just a very slow process, and it will always take over the tree. There's no cure for bacterial leaf scorch. You can keep the tree as healthy as possible for as long as possible, and some people will even have a tree company come in and put antibiotics into the tree. Wow. But that's very expensive and has to be done all the time, and it's just going to slow down the inevitable, which is when this bacteria just takes over the xylem of the entire tree and will just take it out.
Wow. And the thing about the leaves, it actually looks like it's been burned by a torch.
Yes.
So bacteria.
Yeah, not that the whole leaf always gets brown. It can be just parts of the leaf that turn.
Wow.
And it can be different sections of the tree. It could be a top section or a lower section or a quarter of the tree. It's very interesting how it affects, but it's the xylem. It's affecting the xylem on that particular side of or part of the tree.
Yeah, which takes water, up to those leaves. How about that?
The next one is oak leaf blister. And that's where you see these raised, it's a fungus, and you see these raised areas that can be almost 2 inches in diameter on an oak leaf. And a lot of people say, "Oh, what is this?" But that is what it is. They'll become yellowish and brownish, and they'll be concave on the leaf. Wet, cool springs again. But maintaining plant vigor is important with this disease because it's cyclical. Some years will be worse than others depending on the weather. It's very dependent on the weather with cool springs. The next thing you need to think of is when those spores are out there, you really don't treat for them, and it rains, they'll splash spores, but they get on the buds of the tree, and it overwinters there.
Right.
So
when it leaks out,
then it rains and they spread out to the leaves. So
are we talking fungal or bacteria?
this is a fungus.
Okay, so it's a fungus. Good.
Yeah.
Okay.
And sometimes it really doesn't seriously affect the tree. Some years are worse than others, but you can do one application of chlorothalonil.
Okay.
And in the spring, as the buds are bursting, and you will control it better.
Okay.
But still, you're talking about a tree.
Yeah, we're talking about a tree. So again, certified arborists.
Yes, they're definitely certified
If you want somebody to come out
arborists.
and assess the plant health.
Yeah. Keep it healthy.
Keep it healthy.
Water and drought. Next, shot hole disease.
know about
Oh my
all-
goodness.
All those shot hole diseases, right? Okay.
These cause brown spots on the leaves, usually of the prunus species, the plums, the cherries, the laurels. And what happens is the inside of the little hole that turns brown, it then dies. And then you see little holes
Yeah,
in
because
your
that tissue
leaf.
falls out.
Yeah,
right,
the
in
tissue falls,
plant
and
tissue.
you've got, so that's why it looks like somebody's shot
Yeah, buckshots.
buckshot through the tree, but that's not really what it is. Again, this is favored by wet, cool weather. It's an ongoing story. Air circulation. That's one thing about these. If you've got a cherry tree that's in amongst a bunch of other trees, you need to make sure there's enough air movement and prune it away. And then also the tree itself, the canopy itself needs to have air circulation through it. So
a good point.
the more air circulation you get, the less you'll have of the shot hole disease.
Right.
You can spray it, but it would be a regular spray program. You can't just spray it once, and because all fungicides are mostly preventative and not curative.
That's right.
So you have to have a program of spraying fungicide on it. And there's a lot of places I know that have lots of cherry trees, and they want that's their signature. They have a company, certified arborists, come in and spray regularly for this disease on these cherry trees and other plums and things like that.
Because they will get that disease. And again, practice good sanitation
Good
if those
sanitation.
leaves fall.
Yeah,
Okay.
definitely.
All right.
Powdery mildew.
Yeah, saw a lot of that this year.
Again, cool, wet springs is caused by it kind of be a white or a grayish fungus that grows on the new growth especially. Dogwood trees are especially susceptible to it. Again, wet, cool weather in the spring and sometimes the fall also. Good air circulation again. Because you think about it, dogwood trees and are in as shade under the shade of other
They're
trees.
understory trees.
Yeah, so you've got to have air circulation in there. You got to think about these things, prune them away from each other. Make sure the dogwood has some air circulation in through the leaves. And irrigation systems that keep throwing water on the trees. Try not to have that happen.
Right.
Because that's just going to increase the chance of it getting powdery mildew. But most importantly, get species that are resistant to it.
Yeah. Resistant
There
varieties.
are resistant varieties to a lot of these, to anthracnose and to a lot of these others, the diseases we're talking about. But you have to look for the newer varieties that say they're resistant to some of these.
Sure. And let's make sure
diseases.
we cover this because we're saying air circulation a lot. So what do we
Yes.
mean by that? Why
Air
are we saying
circulation.
that?
Yeah, you've got to have space between your trees. You've got to see air and light between your trees. And then in the tree, you don't want a dense canopy. You want dappled shade. So you want to be able to see some shade and some sun come through the tree.
Okay.
And then you'll know you have enough air circulation around it so that the leaves don't stay continually wet
There you go.
all the time.
Right. You want those to dry out.
You want everything to dry out.
That's right. Okay. Good, good.
And the last thing we've got is cankers.
Yeah.
And you know what? This is the sad part about cankers. Cankers are mostly our fault. because it's mechanical problems that start the
Hadn't
canker.
thought about it like that. You're
Yeah,
right.
it's the cankers are mostly our fault because we've run into them with something.
Yeah, lawnmowers, weed eaters, yeah.
Something.
Yeah, something, yeah.
And it causes a dark section to form on for the wound.
Right.
Well, you know, some cankers can, you know, the tree can outlive itself and close over that wound that you've created, as long as it's not too much of the percentage of around the base of the tree.
Okay.
But, you know, there are some canker diseases that when they get in, it's a death sentence, and that's like hypoxylin canker, chestnut blight, cytospora. All of those are, when they get in, there's no saving the tree.
Right, because it makes it hard for the water and nutrients to get around that area, right, where that canker is, to get up to the upper canopy.
It does. Yeah.
Yeah, how about that?
And sometimes you'll see a canker and then the leaves and stuff branches will die because it's not getting the nutrients and water that it needs. Yeah.
Exactly.
But keep trees, if you've got that problem, just keep trees as healthy as you can.
Okay. Healthy as you can, right? 'Cause we want those trees to look good, not awful.
Yes, that's right.
All right. Thank you, Joanna. I appreciate that. Good information. So we're looking at this crepe myrtle, and guess what? It has crepe myrtle bark scales. There's some scales here. Have some up above. Crepe myrtle bark scales have piercing, sucky mouth parts. They feed on plant sap. So when should you treat for the crepe myrtle bark scale? Well, we're getting a little late in the season to do a systemic soil drench now, but what you can do is do a horticultural oil treatment. It will actually smother these crepe myrtle bark scales. And then I would come back next year in the spring with a systemic drench. The active ingredient for that systemic drench would be imidacloprid. Please read and follow the label directions on that. So again, crepe myrtle bark scale. Piercing, sucky mouth parts, they actually feed on plant sap, which can weaken your crepe myrtles. All right, Miss Sherry. So not drying herbs, but preserving
That is
herbs.
correct, yes.
That's correct, okay.
Yes.
So what do we need to know about preserving those herbs?
Well, you started out with drying.
Okay.
Most people do think this is the time of the year to harvest and dry. But that's slightly incorrect because we should actually be harvesting and doing all of this year round. Not year round, from spring.
Okay.
For example, you can get 2 to maybe 5 pounds of basil from one plant.
One plant.
If you collect it properly.
Okay.
So you're supposed to keep pinching in it and it gets bushy. So I've brought an example of some basil that I did last year. And as you can see, it's nice and dry.
Yeah,
and when
dry.
you want it to sound like potato chips when it crumbles. And this is nice. Now, the stalks, I'm not too sure. I cheated and this has been out, so I should have, as soon as it got nice and crisp, put it up. Or if there was any doubt, remove the leaves and left the stems.
Okay.
But one of the things that I want to talk about is, thank you.
Yes.
And this is one method to dry for something that you know is going to crumble, and you use screens.
Okay.
And I cheated and used a smaller screen, if Booker will tilt it for the camera, and you can see the little black dots are the seeds, so I can collect seeds. But if you don't know anybody that can make you some seeds, screens, then you can just use a paper
old
sack,
paper sack.
Okay.
and hang it inside. Oh, and this also shows, I bundle using rubber bands. As plant material dries, it shrinks.
Okay.
We all know that.
We know.
If you just use a string, sometimes you go find out that you just have everything's on the floor. But I wanted to talk to you about pastes.
Okay.
We dry, it's easy, but we're all from the South. We've all had dried black-eyed peas, right? And we've had fresh black-eyed peas.
Yes, we have.
And you know there's a major difference in the flavor, right?
Right.
So same thing for dried herbs.
Okay.
So you can also make pastes. And that preserves the flavor. It tastes fresh. You do just enough oil to cover the plant material, put it in a food processor, put it in a bag. Now, you also want to be sure to label what you put in the bag and what quantities. When you've put it in the freezer, lay it flat,
Okay.
and let it freeze. And then you have little planks, and you can put it anywhere. Because let me tell you from experience, if you put it over something and it droops around it and freezes, you may have to thaw both items at the same time. But when it comes time to use it, you can pull it out. You've got a little plank. You either break off a corner, whack it on the table, or use the whole bit. If you like pesto, what you would do is use the oil and the amount of material required, which is usually about 2 cups of plant to 2/3 of oil, and put the whole thing in here. So when you have company come over in the winter, you pop this out and you have
And there
fresh
you have
pesto,
it.
and they don't know
That's
any
right.
difference.
That's right. I like pesto too, so that's good.
And so talking the paste, there's a whole lot of methods. You can do syrups, you can do vinegars, salts, sugars. So let's go. Would y'all
Let's
like
go
to
with the
taste?
vinegars.
Let's go to taste something
go to the
next.
vinegar.
Yes.
We can do that. Sure we can.
Here's 3 different vinegars I've used, and it's just as simple as you put the plant material in the container, pour the vinegar over.
Okay.
What vinegar do you need to use? Well, what do you like? This one's apple cider vinegar, and you can see it's a little cloudy.
Okay.
That may be off-putting to some people, but that's nothing other than this still has the mother in it.
Okay.
The mother is what makes vinegar, so it kind of will roll around in the bottom, and maybe it's not attractive, but it's fine. It won't hurt you. This one's made with white wine vinegar, and this one's made with red wine. See how nice and clear this
Yeah, it
is?
is
So the
clear.
white wine. This is a Bloody Mary mix. I've got a book that has different recipes in it. So, and this one's got cardamom and mint and rosemary and garlic. So I know y'all are just wanting to try it. So
I'll try that apple cider.
you want the apple
I'll try
cider,
apple
this
cider.
one, the Bloody Mary?
Okay, we'll do that.
It does not really have no alcohol in it. And what would you like to try?
I'll just
That's
get a
what
piece
you
of
have.
bread
The
here.
Bloody Mary
Bloody
for
Mary,
here.
yeah.
Yeah, let me try that there.
And so it is vinegar, so bear that in mind.
But it tastes good though.
Put it in here.
That's
And
good.
you don't have to have recipes. You can just go with it. It's a very forgiving method. It makes great Christmas gifts, and we're
Okay.
starting to talk about this time of year. Yes.
Okay.
So we also said salts. So here's some examples of salts I've made. The pink one is a rosy basil. That's kind of a red basil because you could use the red ruffles and stuff. The one across the table from me is made with Himalayan pink salt. And I used a little bit of Tagetes lucida, which is the Texas tarragon, and I used a little bit of just columnar basil. What's in the cup is some that I did not put in the food processor, so you can see how pretty it is. It didn't keep the nice pink that I was hoping for, but it was a nice thought. So it's pretty much equal parts salt to plant material, and this you do when it's fresh, so it's wet. So you put it in the toaster oven or oven on low heat
Sounds
till
good.
it dries and gets nice, and then you put it in like a coffee grinder is a great item to use to grind up spices.
Coffee grinder.
So-
I would have thought about that.
Yes,
Okay.
because they're small.
Okay.
Dedicate one to your herbs, though, if you're going to do that.
All right.
Otherwise, it's
Not
going to
with
have
the
coffee
coffee, right.
flavor. Right. So if y'all want to try that,
We can try that. Let me
we
hand it to
can
you.
pass it around.
Okay.
So
I know
wanna get
Booker,
you- get
I
you
know
some
Booker
tomatoes,
likes
well, he's going
fried
to.
green tomatoes.
Yeah.
Let's see if he likes the
And
red tomatoes, huh?
these are
Just put in here.
You can, or you can sprinkle it on it with your fingers. Either way.
Just put in here.
That's a lot of salt. You want another piece to go
Yeah, we're
with
doing
it.
a lot of salt, yeah.
Of course, I
messing-
like salt, so, and you can, however you would like to do it.
Yeah. Do this here.
I do a lot of salt.
Did you get too
So,
much?
but you know, so it's the basil flavor, and if you wanted to be really, really
But
fancy,
it tastes good though. Mm-hmm. It tastes good.
you can taste the.
like that
So the
salt.
licoricey flavor is the Tagetes lucida, the Texas tarragon, which grows really well here.
It tastes good.
Tastes good.
Yeah,
Then.
yeah.
like that salt.
And I don't know if you noticed, but I said,
Yeah.
did I say wines? If I didn't,
Why?
here's my, and I understand we're not supposed to drink it, but nonetheless, I found a pretty bottled wine, a nice little white wine. You could do red wine, whatever wine you like, and you just open it, uncork it, and then you put whatever herbs in you think you would like. This is Texas tarragon and basil. I wanted you to taste those two flavors, but it's very pretty, and trust me, it's tasty.
We'll
Oh,
take
yeah.
your word for it. How about that?
Yes.
Sherry, thanks for that good information and for this demonstration.
That was good.
That was actually
yeah,
good.
It tasted
It was
good too. I like that. The salt is real good.
in the summertime, the water in the hose gets very hot, especially if it's sitting out in the sun. So if you can, leave your hose in a shady area, because once you turn it on for the first time, test it first to see if it's hot, which it is. And then if it is, then don't water your plants right away. Let it run a little bit till it gets cooler. And then water your plants. And just remember, the summer heat heats the water up in your hose too, so test it before you start watering.
All right, this is our Q&A segment. You ready?
I'm ready.
Great question. So let's jump in, right? Here's our first
Okay.
via email. This is a branch which fell from my oak tree. I thought it was broken, but then noticed a very evenly sawed edge. Also, I noticed a tiny bug in the hole inside the branch. I put it to the side and later noticed a pile of sawdust next to the branch. Apparently, whatever cut off the branch was still in there working away. What is happening? Should I call my tree guys right away? Thanks so much. This is Judy from Memphis, Tennessee. All right, Miss Judy, hold on one second, right?
Yeah.
So this is the larva of the twig pruner, right? He's actually doing this
helping-
damage from the inside
He's
out.
pruning your tree.
Yeah, so it's pruning your tree, right? Again, doing the damage from the inside out, which is why you see the frass or the sawdust. And they actually, pack that frass and sawdust, in those areas to protect it from predators. How about that? Isn't that pretty neat?
Yeah.
So
Very
again, the larva of a twig pruner, when it hits the ground, here's what you do. You collect it and you throw it away. No need to pull out any chemicals, anything like that. Practice good sanitation. Pick those twigs up, throw them away. And of course, when the larva grows up, right, it becomes one of those long-horned beetles. So, pretty much like the twig girdler.
Yes, the twig girdler.
But this is the twig pruner. All right. So there you have it, Miss Judy. No need to call the certified arborist. Again, just collect those twigs, throw them in the trash.
That's right.
You'll be just fine, just fine. Just a little pruning for you. Hope that helps you out there. Here's our next viewer email. I have a dwarf crepe myrtle with at least 4 suckers about 6 inches tall. Can I transplant crepe myrtle suckers to another site? If I do transplant them, is 1 sucker enough, or should I plant 2 suckers together? And this is Wayne. Guess what, Wayne? We have somebody here who's actually transplanted
Yes.
crepe myrtle
Suckers.
suckers.
That's right.
So can you tell us?
Yeah.
1 or 2? Or?
Well, it's up to you.
Okay.
But you can take several, but one thing you need to do is don't plant them exactly together.
Ah.
Because think about the tree when it gets larger. See how, it'll get large in girth. And if you put them too close together, they're going to end up growing into each other.
Okay.
So I like to just do one and separate it from the other one. But you can do more than one. I would, dig up all 4 of them if you want to. Some of them might or might not live. It depends on how much roots you get
That's gonna be
with
key.
it.
Yeah, you gotta get
And then
the
you've got to
roots with
keep,
it.
once you do it, you got to keep watering it and making sure it's okay.
Right. Yeah, you definitely have to get the roots. So were these suckers close to your crepe myrtle?
Yeah,
To the mother
they were
tree, or were they
within-
out a little bit?
They were out a little bit in the
Okay.
yard. They weren't right up next to it or
Right.
anything.
Right.
Yeah.
So yeah, it can be done. I mean, you've done it.
Yeah, I've
but
done it.
I do know you have to, make sure you get the
Some
root system.
root, yeah.
you got to
Some
get
gotta
some
get
of the
some
roots out of
roots.
there, for this to happen. And then you have a beautiful tree.
Yes, I have some that my father planted, and so does my sister, because we we transplanted the suckers.
How about that? So there you have it, Wayne. It works. All right. Thank you much for that question. Here's our next viewer email. I have dead spots on this row of trees. What is going on? What can I do to make my trees healthy again? Diane from Hernando, Mississippi. So as you can see there,
Yeah.
Look at that at the top.
Yeah. It reminds me of bagworms.
God, it
And I
reminds me of
really,
bagworms,
really
yeah.
want to know if she can see them, because you should be able to see the little bags hanging in the trees. Because that would be I've seen that damage before.
I have too,
And
right at the top,
that's
yeah.
usually what it is. BT, Bacillus thuringiensis, is real easy. I've had this problem before, and I've put the BT in and dialed the rate that I needed for the end of a garden hose,
right.
so I could get it up further in the
Gotcha.
tree, and sprayed BT on a tree that had bagworms, and I haven't seen them in 2 or 3 years now.
Right. Right.
So it can be done. She'll see them, little bags on the trees, to make sure that's what that is.
And the larva is going to be out for those bagworms pretty much in the spring,
Mm-hmm.
right? But after it forms those bags, it's going to be tough to use
Yeah.
any type of insecticide.
It
so
won't.
at that point, if you can reach them, you could take them off.
Picking them off would be
Possibly.
really good at this point.
Right.
May and
Yeah,
June.
this late in- yeah,
May
late in
and
the
June,
season.
when they're actively feeding, is when you want to
Right.
apply the BT. And also at this point too, it looks bad, so maybe a little fertilizer and TLC with trying to keep the plants healthy
Right.
will help it grow out of that.
Right. And keep those evergreens watered, please.
Yes.
During any drought-like conditions, they need to be watered for sure, because if not, they become stressed. And then when those plants become stressed, then guess what?
Bugs.
Here come the bugs.
Yeah. Right.
All right. So thank you for that question, Miss Diane. We appreciate those pictures too. Good
Yeah,
pictures.
good
So thank
pictures.
you much. Joel, fun as always.
It
Thank you
is
much.
fun.
Thank you much. Remember, we love to hear from you. Send us an email or letter. The email address is familyplot@wkno.org, and the mailing address is Family Plot, 7151 Cherry Farms Road, Cordova, Tennessee 38016. Or you can go online to familyplotgarden.com. That's all we have time for today. Thanks for joining us. To learn more about any of the tree diseases Joellen talked about, or get more information on preserving herbs over the winter, head on over to familyplotgarden.com. Be sure to join us next week for the Family Plot, Gardening in the Mid-South. Be safe.